A cruise ship should be the safest place in the world for a family vacation. You're surrounded by people, music, staff, and security. But what if I told you that someone can disappear from a ship full of thousands of passengers without a single trace? In March of 1998, 23-year-old Amy Lynn Bradley boarded the Royal Caribbean cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas with her parents Ron and Eva and her younger brother Brad. The ship set sail from San Juan, Puerto Rico, on a week-long voyage through the Caribbean. Its itinerary was idyllic: stops in St. Thomas, Aruba, and finally Curacao. Postcard-perfect islands meant to give passengers a taste of paradise. For the Bradley family, this was meant to be a dream vacation. Amy had just graduated from college, and this trip was a way to celebrate before she started her career and new life as an adult. But on the morning of March 24th, as the Rhapsody of the Seas docked in Willemstad, Curacao, paradise turned into a nightmare. Amy vanished. She had been seen only hours earlier, sitting safely on her family's balcony, and then she was gone. No body was ever found. No definitive explanation was ever given. And more than 2 decades later, her case remains one of the most disturbing mysteries in modern true crime. Netflix's documentary, Amy Bradley is Missing, has recently reignited global attention. The 3 episodes, Vanished at Sea, I Saw Her, and Message in a Bottle, offered a chilling portrait of her story, but the full truth is far more complex, emotional, and haunting. In this video, we are going to revisit Amy's disappearance in detail. We'll look at her life, the last hours before she vanished, the cruise line's shocking response, the disturbing eyewitness accounts, and the theories that continue to haunt this case. Amy was not a troubled young woman, nor someone planning to escape her life. She was vibrant, healthy, and deeply loved. Born in Virginia in 1974, Amy grew up as a bright and athletic child. She excelled in basketball and swimming, even working as a lifeguard during the summers. Her passion for sports led her to study sports psychology, and by 1998 she had already graduated from college. Amy also stood out because of her unique tattoos: a Tasmanian devil spinning a basketball, a sun on her lower back, a Chinese symbol on her right ankle, and a gecko on her navel. These tattoos would later play a critical role in several alleged sightings. Her parents, Ron and Eva, described her as independent, witty, and compassionate. She was the type of person who looked after her younger brother Brad and never hesitated to speak her mind. Friends said she had a contagious laugh, and family photos from the weeks before her disappearance show a confident young woman excited about her future. In the months before she disappeared, Amy reconnected with a former girlfriend, Molly McClure. Although their relationship hit a rough patch in January 1998, Amy confessed impulsively to kissing someone else. She attempted to make amends in a deeply emotional gesture. 1 month before the cruise, she sent Molly a handwritten message in a bottle that read, "There is an ocean between us, like I am on a desert island, waiting for you to rescue me. Stranded, Amy." Molly appears in the Netflix series, recalling their connection and the difficulty of revisiting that part of their story. Her brother Brad, however, was clear about the family dynamics. He said, "Our family was super close and loving. She had a boyfriend at the time of her disappearance. Amy told us she was bi in 1995. It was old news. Nobody gave a shit." All of this is important because one of the theories about Amy's disappearance is that she voluntarily left, either fleeing personal struggles or starting anew. But when you consider her caring family, her relationships, her future plans, and her character, it doesn't align. Amy was not someone planning to vanish. In March of 1998, Amy's parents invited her and her brother Brad on a cruise aboard the Rhapsody of the Seas. The ship, owned by Royal Caribbean, was a massive floating city with clubs, restaurants, and thousands of passengers. For the Bradley family, it was supposed to be a celebration. Amy had recently graduated, and they wanted to spend one last trip together before she settled into her adult career. On board, Amy enjoyed the atmosphere, but was also cautious. Her mother later said Amy had expressed that she sometimes felt uncomfortable with how certain crew members or staff looked at her. This detail would later become more significant, but at the time, it was brushed aside as just a young woman being observant. The cruise began normally, sun, drinks, dancing, but the night of March 23rd, just hours before Amy disappeared, would change everything. That evening, Amy and her brother Brad went to the ship's nightclub. They were seen drinking, laughing, and dancing with other passengers. Several witnesses later recalled that Amy spent much of the night talking and dancing with a member of the ship's band known as Yellow. Brad later said Yellow seemed unusually focused on Amy, and even other passengers remembered their interaction. At one point, he was seen sitting with Amy and Brad, talking closely. At around 3:30 a.m., Amy returned to her cabin. Her father, Ron, woke up around 5:30 a.m., stepped outside and saw Amy sleeping on a lounge chair on the balcony. Relieved that she was safe, he went back to bed. But when he woke again half an hour later, the chair was empty. Amy was gone. There were no signs of a struggle. Her shoes and cigarettes were still in the room. Her family knew instantly that something was wrong. Amy wasn't the type to wander off, and she would never leave without her essentials. Later, Yellow denied knowing Amy well, though witnesses remembered differently. Years after the disappearance, he even passed a polygraph test. But Amy's family has always remained uneasy about his involvement, something Netflix barely mentioned. The Bradleys immediately notified the crew. They begged for an announcement to be made over the ship's intercom, asking passengers to look for Amy. But unbelievably, the staff refused. Their reason? They didn't want to disturb the other guests. Even worse, just a few hours later, the Rhapsody of the Seas docked in Curaçao, and passengers were allowed to disembark freely. Imagine the horror of her parents, knowing their daughter was missing, while hundreds of strangers walked off the ship unchecked. If Amy had been abducted, her captors could have easily blended into the crowd and taken her into the city without anyone noticing. It wasn't until nearly 8 a.m., long after passengers had begun leaving, that a ship-wide announcement was finally made. By then, it was too late. Brad later said he could never forgive the cruise director, who responded with a chilling remark. "Life goes on. Cruises go on." To the family, that comment symbolized the lack of urgency and empathy that may have cost them their only chance to save Amy. By the time the authorities were contacted and the Coast Guard began searching, precious hours had already been lost. Helicopters, divers, and rescue teams found nothing. Amy Lynn Bradley had disappeared, and the chance of finding her quickly had slipped away. The idea that Amy may have been kidnapped grew stronger as reports of possible sightings began to surface. 1998, Curaçao Beach. A Canadian tourist claimed he saw a young woman on the beach who matched Amy's description. What struck him most were her tattoos, very specific designs identical to Amy's. 1999, Navy officer in a brothel. Perhaps the most chilling account came just 1 year later. A U.S. Navy officer said a woman approached him in a Curaçao brothel and begged for help. She told him her name was Amy, but by the time investigators returned, the building had been cleared. 2005, Caribbean photo. Investigators later received a photograph from a Caribbean-based sex trafficking website. The image showed a woman lying on a bed, appearing older, thinner, but her face and tattoos closely resembled Amy's. The FBI investigated but could never confirm her identity. Each lead brought hope, but none were ever proven. Still, the consistency of these accounts has led many to believe Amy did not fall overboard. She was taken. So what really happened? Over the years, three main theories have emerged. The first is that Amy fell overboard. While possible, her background as a lifeguard and the calm seas that morning make this unlikely. She would have had a strong chance of surviving long enough to call for help, and no evidence of her body was ever found. The second theory is that she left voluntarily. Some argue that Amy wanted to start a new life, but this contradicts everything we know about her: her love for her family, her excitement about her career, and her personality. The third and most disturbing theory is abduction. Perhaps Amy was targeted by someone on the ship, possibly even by crew members or associates. She may have been drugged, smuggled off in Curaçao, and forced into human trafficking. This would explain the alleged sightings, the brothel account, and the refusal of the ship to act quickly. A lesser-known idea was put forward by investigative journalist James Renner. He suggested that Amy may have experienced what psychologists call the call of the void, a sudden, irrational urge to jump from a high place. He pointed to handprints and footprints on the balcony as possible evidence. But even Renner admitted there has never been a confirmed case of a young woman trafficked off a cruise ship in the Caribbean. For many, this theory feels implausible compared to the chilling sightings that came later. If the abduction theory is true, Amy's disappearance was not a tragic accident, but a calculated crime, one that could have been prevented. Amy's parents and brother never gave up. They launched campaigns, offered rewards: $250,000 for Amy's safe return and $50,000 for verified information about her location. They appeared on talk shows, news broadcasts, and true crime series. But their fight for answers also made them targets. Over the years, con artists tried to take advantage of their grief. In one infamous case, a man claiming to be a Navy SEAL offered to rescue Amy, but only if the family paid him money. He was later exposed as a fraud. Decades later, the case still grips the public. When Netflix released Amy Bradley is Missing, even celebrities like Kim Kardashian spoke out, calling the story mind-blowing and terrifying. Her post to millions of followers reignited awareness and reminded the world that Amy's case remains unsolved. For the Bradleys, however, the nightmare never ended. Every call, every tip, every rumor was a moment of both hope and heartbreak. To this day, they wait for answers that have never come. Amy Lynn Bradley's disappearance remains one of the most haunting mysteries of the modern era. A young woman, full of life, vanished in the safest place imaginable: a family cruise. The failures of the investigation, the chilling sightings, and the unanswered questions have left a scar that time cannot heal. Was Amy abducted and trafficked? Was she betrayed by someone she trusted? Or is the truth something no one has yet uncovered? What do you believe happened to Amy Bradley? Share your theories in the comments below. And if you want to hear more true crime stories, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because in true crime, the most terrifying stories are not the ones we can explain, but the ones we cannot.